Welcome to the Warsaw Narrative. Today's episode is about my personal connection to the Warsaw Uprising, which began on August 1st, 1944, and saw thousands of Poles fight to liberate the city from the Germans before the arrival of the Soviet army. One of these people was my grandmother, Krystyna. These stories come from an interview my grandmother gave to the Warsaw Uprising Museum, for which I am very grateful. But I also remember hearing them myself. The Uprising Museum conducted hundreds of interviews with people about their experiences during the uprising in their archive of spoken history. I highly recommend you check it out. Link is in the description. When the war began in 1939, my grandmother Krystyna had just finished high school and was preparing to study pharmacy, but the university was shut down by the Germans. In 1940, Krystyna, just 19 years old, began working at the municipal office in Konstancin, a town south of Warsaw. She was in charge of the tax department, but her other job was far more dangerous. Krystyna and her co-workers used their position to help people. She passed along warnings to local residents when German inspections were coming, or changed lists or documents that were used by the Germans. But one day, everything almost collapsed. She was at work, sitting at her desk, when soldiers from the resistance, Armia Krajowa, the Home Army, came into the office. They wanted to destroy records the Germans might use. Boxes of documents went flying out the windows, to be burned. Suddenly, 3 German soldiers appeared at the door. No one knew they were coming. One of the resistance fighters asked, "Who is it?" "Deutsche Polizei," was the answer. The resistance fighter opened the door and shot the first German. He collapsed at Krystyna's feet, dead, bleeding under her desk. Then his pistol jammed and the 2 other Germans ran away. The resistance fighters escaped through the window, leaving Krystyna and the other workers behind, shocked, and standing over a German corpse. Everyone expected the worst. That night, Krystyna and her co-workers were held under armed guard. Would they be shot, deported? No one knew. But then, around midnight, the Germans let them go. And the next day, against all fear, Krystyna returned to work. To her amazement, the case was closed. No investigation, no one arrested. The Germans had changed the story to save face, claiming they'd been attacked by a large force, that they were victims. But the blood stain on the wooden floor under the desk stayed for years. Krystyna joined the underground resistance in early 1941. Her code name was Mak, or Poppy in English. She was a courier and a messenger. She always had to be ready. Whenever orders came in, she responded. One day it might be a coded message, the next, weapons. She cycled between villages, took the train into Warsaw, and carried whatever was needed. One summer day, Krystyna was riding her bike down a country road with a package attached to her bike. Suddenly, a German patrol car drove up beside her, with the Germans inspecting her closely. Then they drove up the road and stopped. Without fear or hesitation, she drove around the Germans. They looked at her and let her pass. She knew if she flinched or hesitated, she might have ended up in Auschwitz. Travel into Warsaw came with its own risks. Arrests at the Konstancin train station were frequent, but she was never caught. Krystyna and her friend had a tactic. They dressed like carefree teenagers and took horse-drawn carriages through the city, chatting, laughing, pretending there was no war, while smuggling whatever was needed. On August 1st, 1944, the Warsaw Uprising began, but Krystyna didn't know this. In fact, she was supposed to go on a date. Instead, she had to report to her assembly point. That night, the fighting began. She had to cross a road under fire to join her commanding officer, and somehow she made it. She spent the night on watch in the pouring rain. She felt a bullet passing close to her ear. Some of her comrades weren't as lucky. She saw their bodies in the morning. The uprising in that part of Konstantin collapsed almost immediately. There were orders to retreat. Krystyna went home, and the uprising continued elsewhere. Almost right away, wounded soldiers started arriving at the local hospital in Konstantin. There was hardly any food, nothing to keep these young men alive. So stepped in Mr. Kowalski, who owned a villa, and offered to set up a kitchen inside it. Krystyna and her friends cooked every day to feed the soldiers. But someone talked, and the Germans found out. Just before the Germans arrived, a woman died of typhus in one of the rooms. When the Germans came to question the kitchen, Krystyna and her friends started explaining that they were just cooking for themselves and that recently someone died of typhus. As soon as the Germans heard typhus, they turned pale and quickly left. They only came back to put a big warning poster on the door with a louse on it, and from that moment, the kitchen was left alone. For the Germans, the area was now a typhus danger zone, and the kitchen kept feeding people until January 1945. To end, I will leave you with what my grandmother thought of the uprising. For her, it was a magnificent act of patriotism led by extraordinary young people who selflessly fought for their country, but felt great sadness over the many unnecessary deaths. She believed that if these young people had survived, Poland and the world might have been different. Thank you for listening, and take care.